Made it down here to the campground. Gonna cut some trees that have fallen in the campsite and clean it up. There's some dead snags around here too. Gonna fall those. The reason why I'm doing this plunge cutting, you'll see here, where I plunge and swipe out, plunge back in and swipe out, is I call that the shaver cut, because every time I re-enter, I'm shaving off a little more wood. So that way, if there's a top bind and it's trying to bow in, I'm widening a little bit so I can, and I keep moving the saw bar, sliding it so I can feel if it's starting to pinch. And it wasn't. In fact, it felt like it was a bottom bind. I decided to go ahead and throw in a wedge just for to be safe, Uh, it's unusual because it looks like it's loaded for a top bind, but the way it's laying, it looks like a top bind, but it's actually not. It's kind of weird. You never know what trees are going to do. That's why you should always be prepared for the wood to behave differently than what you predicted. Driving a wedge in there also helps lift the wood up off the ground a little bit so you get more clearance so you don't hit the dirt when you do the final cut. You're getting in there to finish the cut. It's kind of hard to determine where the loaded forces are in the tree when it has a twist, and I think that's what this tree had, because I couldn't figure out if it was a top bind or a bottom bind. It might have been like some kind of a side bind, but I ended up getting my saw pinched in there when I finally freed it up. It's a good thing I had my wedges. Just threw a wedge in there. But yeah, when a tree's got a twist, it's almost worse than a bind, because a top bind or a bottom bind, you can just, remedy that by adjusting for it. But when it's a twist, you don't really know where the forces are. The forces could end up moving and changing on you.
The good old redhead saved the day. Probably take the wedges out first. Now that we got the tree freed up, fall it right in here.
Right here I've got two codominant stems, two trunks side by side, otherwise known as codominant stems. They're both dead.
2 more times. You can see it going up, so it goes up and away from the ground. Nice, perfect. Excellent.
I don't know why I didn't throw a wedge in here sooner. I thought I could get by with just hinging it over, and it had a lean sort of the way I wanted to go, and I was trying to get it to walk around to the side a little more, but I should have just thrown wedges in there. I don't know. I was just in a hurry. See, that's why you make mistakes, is when you think you can take a shortcut. This tree was way too rotten, and I didn't leave enough hinge wood on there. I cut too much of the hinge wood, and that was my fault. I had a feeling something was going wrong, so that's why I jumped back out of the way. I knew something was going to happen. This madrone is like 90% dead, so I'm taking it down. I was looking at all the stacked brush piles in here. It looks like it was a lot of work because there's hundreds of them. There's fuel right there, fuel right there. The fuel loading down here on this flats down here is really intense because a lot of it's dry and extremely flammable. Even though it's wintertime, this stuff's ready to go. Me and Kai were saying we should come down here and just start burning these during a rainy day, do 1 or 2 at a time, or 3 or 4. Well, that's about it for today, folks. I got to go do something else. Take care and be safe.